The blood-red horizon painted the sky as Sophia Adams clutched her swollen belly, the fading daylight casting long shadows across her small homestead in Verde, Nevada. December 1876 had brought an unexpected early snowfall, blanketing the rugged landscape in pristine white that would soon become her greatest enemy. Sophia winced as another sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. At 24 years old and 7 months pregnant, she knew something was terribly wrong. Her husband Thomas had left 3 months ago, riding off after a heated argument, never to return. The letter from Denver confirming his death in a saloon brawl had arrived just last week. "Hold on, little one," she whispered to her unborn child, struggling to maintain her balance as she carried firewood inside. Her cabin, once filled with hope and dreams, now felt like a prison of memories and broken promises. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and Dr. Holloway's office in town might as well have been on the moon given her condition. The storm was building. The mountain sky had turned the color of bruised flesh, promising more snow by nightfall. Sophia knew she needed to finish her chores before being trapped inside. She had survived 3 months alone. She would endure this too. The first flakes began to fall as she stepped onto the rickety porch. She needed more firewood enough to last through the night. Huddled in her threadbare coat, she made her way toward the woodpile at the side of the cabin. The path was already slick, covered in a deceptive layer of ice beneath the fresh powder. One misstep was all it took. Her worn boots slid against the ice, and Sophia felt herself falling, unable to catch her balance. She reached desperately for the railing but grasped only air. The world tilted around her as she tumbled down the 3 steps, landing hard on the frozen ground below. The pain was immediate and terrifying. Sharp, hot agony tore through her belly and back. Sophia cried out, her voice swallowed by the howling wind. Warm wetness spread between her legs, seeping through her dress. "No, please God, no," she sobbed, struggling to push herself up. Her hand came away red blood stark against the snow. Terror gripped her heart as she realized the truth. She was losing her baby, the only family she had left in the world. Miles away, Quinn Keller guided his horse along the snow-covered trail toward Verde. At 32, he was no stranger to harsh winters or difficult journeys. 10 years as a ranch hand, an occasional bounty hunter had hardened him against most things life could throw at a man. But even he had to admit, this weather was testing his limits. His dark hair peeked out beneath his Stetson, stubble covering his strong jaw. He pulled his coat tighter, squinting against the snow that was falling more heavily now. He'd planned to reach town before nightfall, find a room at the saloon, and continue to his new job at the Hanover Ranch tomorrow. But the storm had other ideas. Quinn spotted smoke rising in the distance, a cabin, isolated but clearly inhabited. He considered riding past. He wasn't one to impose, and whoever lived there might not welcome a stranger. But as the wind picked up and the temperature dropped further, practicality won out. He'd asked to warm up, maybe rest his horse before continuing. As he approached, something on the ground caught his eye. A splash of color against the white. He rode closer and felt his blood run cold. A woman lay crumpled at the bottom of the porch steps, blood staining the snow beneath her. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, splaying around her pale face like a halo. One hand clutched protectively at her obviously pregnant belly. "Madam," Quinn called, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. He rushed to her side, kneeling in the blood-stained snow. "Madam, can you hear me?" Sophia's eyes fluttered open, unfocused with pain and fear. "My baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. "Please, help my baby." Quinn assessed the situation quickly. She was conscious, which was good, but the blood, there was too much of it, spreading too quickly. Her face was ashen, lips taking on a bluish tinge that had nothing to do with the cold. "I'm going to help you, madam. My name's Quinn Keller." He spoke clearly, trying to keep her focused. "What's your name?" "Sophia," she managed, grimacing through another wave of pain. "Sophia Adams." "Sophia, I need to get you inside. Is that your cabin?" She nodded weakly. Quinn gently slid his arms beneath her, lifting her as carefully as possible. She cried out, the movement intensifying her pain. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Just hold on." Inside, the cabin was neat but sparse. A bed stood against one wall, a small stove providing the only heat. Quinn laid Sophia down on the bed, his mind racing. The bleeding hadn't stopped. If anything, it seemed worse. "Sophia, where's the nearest doctor?" he asked, pulling blankets over her shivering form. "Verdi," she gasped. "Dr. Holloway. 5 miles." Quinn ran a hand through his hair, weighing their options. 5 miles in this storm with a bleeding, pregnant woman. It was madness, but staying here. That might be a death sentence for both her and the child. "Is there anyone closer, any neighbors who could help?" Sophia shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No one for miles. My husband, he's gone." Quinn made his decision. "I'm taking you to the doctor, right now." "We'll never make it," Sophia whispered, her eyes closing briefly. "The storm will make it," Quinn interrupted, his voice firm with a conviction he wasn't entirely sure he felt. "I've ridden through worse. My horse is strong, and I know these mountains." He moved quickly then, stoking the fire and banking it so it wouldn't spread while they were gone. He found extra blankets, wrapping Sophia in layers. From his saddlebags, he retrieved his oilskin coat, not ideal, but it would help keep the snow off her. "I'm going to lift you again," he warned her. "It's going to hurt, but I need to get you on my horse." Sophia nodded, steeling herself. When Quinn lifted her, she bit her lip until it bled, determined not to scream. Outside, the storm had intensified, snow swirling in blinding sheets. Quinn's horse, a sturdy buckskin named Rusty, snorted nervously. "Easy, boy," Quinn soothed, somehow managing to mount while still holding Sophia. He positioned her in front of him, supporting her weight against his chest. "I need you to be strong now." With one arm wrapped securely around Sophia, Quinn took the reins and nudged Rusty forward. The horse hesitated, then began to trudge through the deepening snow. "Hold on to me," Quinn told Sophia. "No matter what happens, don't let go." The journey was nightmarish from the first stride. The wind howled around them, driving snow and ice into their faces. Quinn hunched over Sophia as much as possible, trying to shield her from the worst of it. She leaned against him, her body racked with tremors from cold, from pain, from fear. Quinn could feel the warmth of her blood seeping through his clothes, and he urged Rusty faster. "Talk to me, Sophia," he said against her ear, needing to know she was still conscious. "Tell me about yourself." "Not much to tell," she managed. "Came west 3 years ago. Thomas, my husband, he had dreams of striking it rich." "And did he?" Quinn asked, guiding Rusty around a fallen branch buried in snow. "No." Her laugh was bitter, ending in a gasp of pain. "Just broke his promises, left. 3 months ago. Got himself killed in Denver." Quinn tightened his hold, feeling a surge of anger toward a man he'd never met. "I'm sorry. The baby, all I have left." "We're going to save your baby," Quinn promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. "Just stay awake." The trail narrowed as they entered a heavily wooded area. Branches, heavy with snow, hung low across their path. Quinn ducked, pulling Sophia closer to avoid being struck. Rusty picked his way carefully, but the footing was treacherous. Suddenly, the horse stumbled, regaining his balance just before going down completely. The jolt sent a fresh wave of pain through Sophia, who couldn't hold back her cry. I'm sorry," Quinn repeated, his heart pounding. "Are you all right?" "No," she admitted, her voice weaker now. "But keep going." Quinn glanced up at the sky, trying to gauge their position through the swirling snow. They'd been traveling for nearly an hour, moving at a painfully slow pace. They should be getting closer to Verdi, but in this blizzard, he could easily have strayed from the path. As if in answer to his fears, a faint glimmer appeared in the distance. Lights, Verdi's lights, barely visible through the storm but unmistakably there. "Look," Quinn said, pointing with one gloved hand. "Verdi, we're almost there." Sophia stirred against him but didn't respond. Alarmed, Quinn shook her gently. "Sophia, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. "Cold, so cold." "Just a little further," he urged, fear giving his voice an edge. He could feel her slipping away, her body becoming heavier against him. "Stay with me, Sophia." Quinn kicked Rusty into a faster pace, risking the dangerous footing for speed. The horse seemed to sense the urgency, pushing forward with renewed determination. The lights grew brighter, more defined. Quinn could make out individual buildings now, smoke rising from chimneys. "Where's the doctor's office?" he asked, but Sophia had fallen silent again. "Sophia, the doctor where?" "Main Street," she whispered. "White house. Green door." They entered the town, the buildings providing some shelter from the howling wind. The streets were deserted, everyone sensibly indoors on such a night. Quinn squinted through the snow, looking for a white house with a green door, there at the end of the street. A two-story white clapboard house with a small sign swinging in the wind and, just as Sophia had said, a green door. Quinn rode directly up to the porch, not bothering with formalities. "Dr. Holloway," he shouted, his voice hoarse from the cold. "Dr. Holloway, help!" For a terrifying moment, there was no response. Then the door opened, spilling warm light into the snowy night. A man in his 60s, gray-haired and bespectacled, peered out with a lantern raised high. "What in God's name?" he began, then saw Sophia. "Bring her in, quickly." Quinn dismounted as carefully as possible, lifting Sophia's nearly unconscious form from the saddle. He carried her up the steps and through the door, the sudden warmth almost painful against his frozen face. "Put her on the table," Dr. Holloway directed, indicating an examination table in what appeared to be his surgery. "What happened?" "Found her at her cabin about 5 miles out," Quinn explained, gently laying Sophia down. "She fell. She's been bleeding badly." The doctor's practiced hands were already checking Sophia, his expression grave. "How far along is she, do you know?" 7 months, Sophia whispered, surprising them both by speaking. "Please, my baby." "I'll do everything I can, Mrs. Adams," Dr. Holloway promised. He looked at Quinn. "You need to wait outside." Quinn hesitated, strangely reluctant to leave Sophia with a man who, capable as he seemed, was still a stranger to him. "I should stay." "You should not," the doctor cut him off firmly. "She needs immediate attention that requires privacy. My housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, will show you where you can warm up." As if summoned by her name, a plump woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway. "Doctor!" "Oh my goodness, Mrs. Finch, please take this gentleman to the kitchen. Hot coffee, dry clothes if we have them." He turned back to Sophia, already opening his medical bag. "Now, sir, if you please." Quinn met Sophia's eyes one last time. Despite her pain, despite everything, she managed a ghost of a smile. "Thank you," she mouthed. Then Mrs. Finch was ushering him away, closing the surgery door behind them. Quinn stood motionless for a moment, listening to the doctor's calm, professional voice giving instructions to Sophia. Then, feeling more exhausted than he could remember being in years, he followed Mrs. Finch toward the promised warmth. The kitchen was indeed warm, dominated by a large cast iron stove that radiated heat. Mrs. Finch bustled about, pouring coffee into a thick mug and placing it before Quinn. "Drink that," she instructed. "I'll see if the doctor has any spare clothes that might fit you. You're soaked through." Quinn wrapped his hands around the mug, welcoming its warmth. "Will she be all right?" Mrs. Finch's expression softened. "Dr. Holloway is the best physician for 100 miles. If anyone can help that poor girl and her baby, it's him." She studied Quinn curiously. "You don't know her well, do you?" "Never met her before today," Quinn admitted. "I was passing by her cabin, saw her fall." "And you rode through that blizzard to bring her here?" Mrs. Finch shook her head in wonder. "Most men would have left her." "Most men aren't worth much then," Quinn replied simply, sipping the hot coffee. Mrs. Finch smiled approvingly. "I'll find you those dry clothes." Left alone, Quinn's thoughts returned to Sophia. He barely knew her their entire acquaintance span just a few desperate hours, yet he felt strangely connected to her. Perhaps it was the intensity of their shared ordeal, or maybe something more that he couldn't yet define. He thought of her alone in that cabin, pregnant and vulnerable, abandoned by a husband who'd chosen drink and cards over his responsibilities. The thought made his jaw clench. His own father had been cut from similar cloth, leaving Quinn's mother to raise him alone until consumption took her when he was 12. After that, it had been a succession of ranch jobs, learning to survive on his own. Maybe that was why he hadn't hesitated to help Sophia. He knew all too well what it meant to be alone in a world that showed little mercy to the vulnerable. Mrs. Finch returned with clothes that were slightly too short but blessedly dry. Quinn changed in a small adjoining room, returning to the kitchen just as they heard a baby's cry, weak but unmistakable. Quinn's head snapped up, his eyes meeting Mrs. Finch's. The housekeeper's face broke into a smile. "The child lives," she said, clasping her hands together. "Praise God." Relief flooded through Quinn, surprising him with its intensity. He'd been prepared for the worst, knowing how much blood Sophia had lost, how difficult their journey had been. Another hour passed before Dr. Holloway emerged from the surgery, wiping his hands on a towel. His expression was weary but satisfied. "They're both alive," he announced without preamble. "The baby is premature but stronger than I expected. Mrs. Adams has lost a lot of blood, but she's young and healthy. With proper care, I believe they'll both recover." "Can I see them?" Quinn asked, then immediately wondered why he'd asked. What was Sophia to him, after all? Dr. Holloway studied him curiously. "Are you family?" "No, sir, just concerned. Mrs. Adams is resting now, and the baby needs constant warmth and attention." The doctor hesitated, then relented slightly. "You can look in on them briefly. Then I suggest you find lodging at the hotel. The storm's not letting up tonight." Quinn followed the doctor back to the surgery, which had been transformed. The examination table was now covered with clean sheets, and Sophia lay there, pale but peaceful. Beside her, in what appeared to be a wooden box lined with heated blankets, lay the tiniest baby Quinn had ever seen. "A boy," Dr. Holloway said quietly. "Small, but his lungs are good." Quinn approached slowly, careful not to disturb either mother or child. Sophia's face was still deathly pale, but her breathing was steady. The baby, her son, made small, mewling sounds, his tiny fists waving in the air. Something shifted in Quinn's chest, a feeling he couldn't name. He'd done his duty, bringing them to safety. He should leave now, continue to the Hanover ranch tomorrow as planned. But the thought of riding away, of never knowing what became of Sophia Adams and her newborn son, was suddenly unbearable. "Will you stay in Verde, doctor?" he asked. "To care for them?" "For a few days, certainly." "Doctor." Holloway adjusted his spectacles. "But Mrs. Adams will need longer than that to recover fully, and with a premature infant, well, her situation is precarious." She's alone, Quinn said. Her husband is dead. The doctor sighed heavily. I feared as much. That cabin of hers is too isolated for a woman alone, especially with a newborn. I'll speak with Reverend Miller. Perhaps the church ladies can arrange something. Quinn nodded, still watching Sophia and her son. Thank you for saving them. You're the one who brought her through that blizzard, Dr. Holloway countered. Without you, they would both certainly have died. As if sensing their presence, Sophia stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. Her gaze, clouded with exhaustion and lingering pain, found Quinn's face. You stayed, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Quinn moved closer to her side. Of course I stayed. My baby, he's right here, Quinn assured her, gesturing to the makeshift crib. He's small but fighting. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. Thank you, I don't even know your name properly. Quinn Keller, he replied with a small smile. At your service, Mrs. Adams. Sophia, she corrected weakly. Please, call me Sophia. Dr. Holloway cleared his throat. Mrs. Adams needs rest now. Mr. Keller, I must insist I'm going, Quinn assured him. To Sophia, he added, I'll check on you tomorrow before I leave town. You're leaving. Something like disappointment flickered across her face. I have a job waiting at the Hanover Ranch, he explained, but it's not far. I could visit if you'd like. Sophia's smile was tired but genuine. I would like that very much. Quinn tipped his hat to her, strangely reluctant to go but knowing he must. At the door, he turned back for one last look. Sophia had already drifted back to sleep, one hand stretched toward the box that held her son. The storm continued through the night, making Quinn grateful for the room Dr. Holloway had arranged for him at the small hotel. He slept fitfully, his dreams filled with images of blood on snow and Sophia's pale face. Morning brought no relief from the weather. The snow was still falling, though less furiously than the night before. After a simple breakfast, Quinn made his way back to Dr. Holloway's house. He told himself he was merely fulfilling his promise to check on Sophia before leaving, but the truth was, he couldn't have left Verdi without seeing her again. Mrs. Finch answered the door, her round face breaking into a smile when she saw him. Mr. Keller, come in, come in. The doctor said you might return. How are they? Quinn asked, stepping inside and removing his hat. The baby had a difficult night, Mrs. Finch admitted, leading him toward the back of the house. So small, you see, but he's a fighter, that one, and Mrs. Adams is doing better than expected, though still very weak. They entered a small bedroom that clearly served as a recovery room for the doctor's patients. Sophia was propped up in bed, cradling her tiny son against her chest. The sight stopped Quinn in his tracks. Despite her ordeal, despite the shadows under her eyes and the pallor of her skin, she was beautiful in a way he hadn't fully appreciated before. Mr. Keller, she greeted him, her voice stronger than the night before. I was hoping you'd come. I said I would, Quinn replied, approaching the bed. And please call me Quinn. Sophia smiled, shifting slightly to give him a better view of her son. Quinn, then. Would you like to meet Thomas James Adams properly? Quinn leaned closer, studying the tiny face. The baby was indeed small, but his features were perfectly formed, his skin a healthier color than Quinn had expected. He has your eyes, Quinn observed, noting the clear blue that matched Sophia's own. Most babies have blue eyes at birth, she told him. They might change. But I hope they stay blue, like his father's were. There was a note of sadness in her voice that made Quinn wonder about the man who had abandoned her, only to die in some distant saloon. But it wasn't his place to question. He's a handsome fellow, Quinn said instead. Strong too, I'd wager. Dr. Holloway says he's doing better than expected, though we're not out of danger yet. Sophia looked down at her son with such love that Quinn felt like an intruder witnessing something too intimate for his eyes. Every hour he survives gives us more hope. Mrs. Finch had discreetly withdrawn, leaving them alone. Quinn shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the impropriety of being alone with Sophia. The doctor mentioned you'd need time to recover. Sophia nodded, her expression clouding. He doesn't think I should return to the cabin, at least not right away, not alone with Thomas. She hesitated, then continued, but I have nowhere else to go. No family, no friends close enough to help. Quinn thought of his own destination, the Hanover Ranch, where a job as foreman awaited him. It was a good position, one he'd worked hard to secure, but the thought of Sophia struggling alone. What about your cabin? Can you sell it? Perhaps, though there's not much to it, enough for a fresh start somewhere maybe. She met his eyes directly. Doctor, Holloway mentioned that you saved our lives. I don't know how to thank you. No thanks needed, Quinn said gruffly. Anyone would have done the same. No, Sophia corrected quietly. They wouldn't. Most men would have left us to die. Before Quinn could respond, Dr. Holloway entered the room, carrying a tray with what appeared to be medicine and bandages. Good morning, Mr. Keller. I see our patients are doing well today. They are, Quinn agreed, stepping back to give the doctor room. The little one looks stronger already. Doctor. Holloway set down his tray and carefully examined the baby, his experienced hands gentle but thorough. Indeed. Still not out of the woods, but his color is better, and he's taking milk well. He turned to Sophia. Which means we need to ensure you're eating properly too, Mrs. Adams. You're feeding for two now. Sophia nodded obediently. I'll try to eat more, doctor. See that you do. He began changing her bandages, and Quinn turned away, giving her privacy. I should go, he said, moving toward the door. The Hanover Ranch is expecting me, and the snow has eased enough for travel. Sophia's face fell slightly, but she quickly masked her disappointment. Of course. Thank you again for everything, Quinn. Quinn hesitated at the door. The Hanover place isn't far from your cabin. Once you're well enough to return home, I could check in on you from time to time, if you'd like. The smile that lit up Sophia's face was worth any inconvenience such visits might cause. I would like that very much. Then it's settled. Quinn put his hat back on, tipping it slightly. Good day, Mrs. Adams. Doctor. As he left the house and mounted Rusty, Quinn found himself torn between duty and something less definable. He had responsibilities waiting at the Hanover Ranch. He needed the job, the stability it offered. And yet, the thought of Sophia and little Thomas alone in that isolated cabin haunted him. The snow had indeed lessened, though the going was still slow as Quinn made his way out of Verde. The Hanover Ranch lay 15 miles southwest, a substantial property owned by a cattle baron named Joseph Hanover. Quinn had never met the man, but his reputation as a fair employer preceded him. Quinn's thoughts remained with Sophia as he rode. Their connection made little sense. They were strangers thrown together by circumstance, yet he couldn't deny its existence. Perhaps it was merely concern for a vulnerable woman and child. Perhaps it was something more. By late afternoon, Quinn reached the Hanover Ranch. The main house was impressive, a 2-story structure with wide verandas and glass windows, luxuries in this part of Nevada. Several outbuildings, including a bunkhouse, stable, and barn, completed the property. A man emerged from the stable as Quinn approached, middle-aged with a weathered face and a slight limp. You must be Keller, he called out. Boss said you'd be arriving yesterday. Got caught in the storm, Quinn explained, dismounting. Had to stop in Verde. The man nodded, understanding. Name's Sam Perkins. I'm the stable master here. Mr. Hanover's expecting you in the main house. Quinn tended to Rusty first, making sure the horse was properly rubbed down and fed after their difficult journey. Then, brushing snow from his coat, He made his way to the main house and knocked on the door. A housekeeper admitted him, leading him to a study where Joseph Hanover sat behind a large oak desk. Hanover was in his 50s, barrel-chested with iron-gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He stood as Quinn entered. "Keller," he greeted, extending his hand. "Beginning to think you weren't coming." Quinn shook the offered hand. "Apologize for the delay, sir. Weather turned bad yesterday." "So I noticed." Hanover gestured to a chair. "Sit down. Tell me what kept you." Briefly, Quinn explained finding Sophia, the desperate ride to Verdi, and the birth of her son. He kept the details minimal, but something in his tone must have betrayed his feelings, because Hanover studied him with increasing interest. "Sounds like you saved 2 lives, the rancher observed when Quinn finished. "Quite the detour. Couldn't leave them, sir." "No, I don't suppose a decent man could." Hanover leaned back in his chair, considering. "This woman, Mrs. Adams, was it? She's alone now." "Yes, sir. Husband died recently in Denver. And her cabin is near here." Quinn nodded. "About 5 miles east of your property line, I believe." Hanover stroked his beard thoughtfully. "That old Peterson place. Isolated spot. Not ideal for a woman alone with a newborn." He was silent for a moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "Well, we've waited this long for a foreman. We can wait a bit longer." Quinn frowned, confused. "Sir, you clearly have unfinished business in Verdi, Keller. The job will still be here when you're ready to take it properly." "I don't understand." Hanover sighed, as if explaining to a slow child. "This Mrs. Adams needs help. She has no one. And you, unless I'm much mistaken, are troubled by the thought of her struggling alone." When Quinn didn't immediately deny it, Hanover continued. "Take a few days. Make sure she and the child are settled. Then come back and start your duties here with a clear conscience." Quinn was stunned by the offer. "That's very generous, Mr. Hanover." "It's practical," the rancher corrected. "I need a foreman who can focus on his job, not one distracted by worry over a woman and child." He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "3 days, Keller. Then I expect you back here ready to work." "Yes, sir, thank you." As Quinn left the house, relief and gratitude washed over him. 3 days wouldn't solve all of Sophia's problems, but it was something. Time to ensure she had what she needed, to perhaps make arrangements for her care once he had to return to work. He spent the night in the bunkhouse, sharing a simple meal with the ranch hands who would soon be under his supervision. They were a decent bunch, curious about their new foreman but respectful of his privacy. Morning found Quinn riding back toward Verdi, Rusty well-rested and eager. The snow had stopped completely, though the drifts were deep in places, slowing their progress. It was early afternoon by the time he reached Dr. Holloway's house. Mrs. Finch answered his knock, surprise evident on her face. "Mr. Keller, we didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I have a few days before I need to report to the Hanover ranch," Quinn explained. "Thought I'd see how Mrs. Adams and her son are doing." Mrs. Finch's expression warmed. "They're doing well. The baby is stronger today and Mrs. Adams is up and about a bit. Come in, come in." "I'll tell them you're here." Quinn waited in the small sitting room, hat in hand. He felt oddly nervous, like a schoolboy calling on a girl he fancied, which was ridiculous. His interest in Sophia was purely charitable, wasn't it? Sophia entered the room slowly, still moving with the careful gait of someone in pain. But her face lit up when she saw Quinn, and something in his chest tightened in response. "Quinn, this is a surprise." She was wearing a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, her dark hair loosely braided over one shoulder. "Mr. Hanover gave me a few days before I need to start work," Quinn explained, rising to his feet. "I thought I might help you get things in order for when you return to your cabin." Sophia's smile faltered slightly. That's very kind, but Dr. Holloway doesn't think I should return there. Not right away, at least. Not with Thomas being so small. Where will you go? She sank into a chair, gesturing for Quinn to do the same. That's the question, isn't it? I have a little money saved, enough for a room in town for a short while after that. She trailed off, her uncertainty clear. What about your cabin? Could you sell it? Perhaps, though there won't be many buyers this time of year. And even if I sold it, where would I go? What would I do? Sophia sighed, absently twisting a loose thread from her sleeve. I have no skills beyond keeping house. No one to vouch for me. Quinn considered the problem. What if you had somewhere to stay? Just until Thomas is stronger and you can make proper arrangements. Sophia looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? The Hanover ranch is substantial. They have a main house with servants, a bunkhouse for the hands. But Mr. Hanover mentioned there's a small cottage on the property, currently empty. It was used by the previous foreman, but I'll be staying in rooms attached to the bunkhouse. You think Mr. Hanover would let me stay there? Sophia asked, her voice cautious, as if afraid to hope. I can ask, Quinn said. It would be temporary, of course, just until you're back on your feet. The ranch has women working in the main house, the housekeeper, cook, laundress. Perhaps they could help with Thomas while you recover. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. Why are you doing this, Quinn? You don't know me. It was a fair question, one Quinn had asked himself repeatedly. I'm not entirely sure, he admitted, but I know what it's like to be alone in the world. No one should face that, especially not with a newborn to care for. Sophia studied him for a long moment, as if seeing past his words to something deeper. Your kindness is extraordinary. Quinn felt his face warm under her gaze. It's nothing more than decent. In my experience, decency is extraordinary. She reached across the small space between them, briefly touching his hand. If Mr. Hanover agrees, I would be very grateful for the opportunity. Quinn nodded, trying to ignore the lingering warmth where her fingers had brushed his skin. I'll ride back today and speak with him. You'll come back tomorrow to let me know. I will, he promised. One way or another, we'll figure this out, Sophia. The ride back to the Hanover ranch was quicker with the storm fully past. Quinn rehearsed his request mentally, aware he was asking for a significant favor from a man who had already shown unusual generosity. Joseph Hanover received him in the same study, listening without interruption as Quinn explained Sophia's situation and his proposed solution. Let me understand this correctly, Hanover said when Quinn finished. You want me to house a woman I've never met and her newborn infant in my property indefinitely? Put that way, it did sound presumptuous. Quinn shifted uncomfortably. Not indefinitely, sir. Just until she's recovered and can make proper arrangements. Hanover drummed his fingers on the desk, his expression unreadable. Tell me something, Keller. What is this woman to you? Because it seems to me you're going to extraordinary lengths for a stranger. She is a stranger, Quinn admitted. But she's also alone in the world with a premature baby, and I have the means to help her. Or at least you do. Unexpectedly, Hanover laughed. Direct, aren't you? I appreciate that in a foreman. He considered for a moment longer. The cottage has been empty for months. It's nothing fancy, but it's sound and warm. She can stay there while she recovers on one condition. Sir, she earns her keep. Not immediately, I'm not a monster. I understand she needs to heal, but once she's able, she works. We can always use another pair of hands in the main house, especially with my wife returning from San Francisco next month. Relief flooded through Quinn. That's more than fair, Mr. Hanover. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, the rancher warned. My wife might have other ideas when she arrives. But for now, Mrs. Adams can use the cottage. When can she travel? Dr. Holloway says another day or two if the baby continues to improve. Fine. Bring her when she's ready. Hanover rose, extending his hand. Now, are we done with this charity business? Because I'd like to discuss the actual work I'm hiring you for. Quinn spent the next hour learning about the Hanover operation: 3,000 head of cattle, 20 regular hands, and ambitious plans for expansion. By the time he left the study, his mind was spinning with information and responsibilities. It was a bigger job than he'd anticipated, but also a greater opportunity. The following morning, Quinn rode back to Verdi with the good news. Sophia received it with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. "You're sure Mr. Hanover doesn't mind?" she asked, cradling Thomas against her shoulder. The baby was visibly stronger today, his tiny face more filled out, his grip on her finger surprisingly firm. "He's a practical man," Quinn explained. "The cottage was sitting empty. And once you're recovered, you can help in the main house." Dr. Holloway, who had been listening to the exchange, nodded approvingly. "It's an ideal solution, Mrs. Adams. The Hanover Ranch is well regarded and you'll have people around to help with the baby." Sophia looked down at her son, her expression softening. "When do you think we can travel?" "Tomorrow, if the weather holds," the doctor replied. "Not on horseback, mind you. We'll need a wagon with proper bedding." "I'll arrange it," Quinn promised. "One of the Hanover men can drive it into town." As Quinn prepared to leave, Sophia followed him to the door, Thomas still cradled in her arms. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've done so much." "No thanks needed," Quinn assured her. "Just focus on getting stronger, both of you." Sophia smiled, adjusting her hold on Thomas. "Would you like to hold him? Before you go," the offer surprised Quinn. "I've never held a baby before." "There's nothing to it," Sophia encouraged. "Just support his head." Hesitantly, Quinn accepted the tiny bundle. Thomas weighed almost nothing, a fragile warmth against his chest. The baby's eyes, startlingly blue, blinked up at him curiously. "Hello there, little man," Quinn murmured, feeling oddly protective of this small life. "You're getting stronger every day, aren't you?" Thomas made a small sound, his tiny hand closing around Quinn's finger with surprising strength. Something shifted in Quinn's chest, a feeling both uncomfortable and strangely right. "He likes you," Sophia observed, her voice soft. Quinn reluctantly handed the baby back, afraid his rough hands might somehow harm the delicate child. "He's a fine boy. You should be proud." "I am." Sophia's eyes met his, warm with an emotion Quinn couldn't quite define. "Thank you, Quinn, for everything." The next day dawned clear and cold. Quinn arrived in Verdi with a wagon driven by Sam Perkins, the stable master from Hanover Ranch. They had lined the wagon bed with straw and blankets, creating a nest-like space where Sophia and Thomas could travel in relative comfort. Dr. Holloway reviewed his instructions for Thomas's care one final time, providing Sophia with medicines and detailed guidance. Mrs. Finch had packed a basket with food and necessities, and the townsfolk, having heard the story of the dramatic midnight ride through the blizzard, had contributed baby clothes, blankets, and other essentials. "The town has been so kind," Sophia remarked as Quinn helped her into the wagon. "I wish I could repay them somehow." "Folks help each other out here," Sam explained, securing her trunk to the back of the wagon. "It's how we survive." The journey to the Hanover Ranch took most of the day, traveling at a careful pace to avoid jostling Sophia and the baby. Quinn rode alongside, constantly checking on their comfort. Despite her ordeal, Sophia seemed to gain strength from the bright winter sunshine and the promise of security ahead. As they approached the ranch, Quinn felt an unexpected nervousness. He wanted Sophia to be comfortable here, to feel welcome. He wanted this solution to work for her. "It's beautiful," Sophia breathed as the main house came into view, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. Larger than I expected. Hanover's done well for himself, Sam commented. Started with almost nothing 20 years ago. Quinn directed them toward the cottage, situated a discreet distance from both the main house and the bunkhouse. It was a simple structure, just 4 rooms but solidly built and freshly cleaned thanks to Quinn's arrangements the previous day. "It's perfect," Sophia declared as Quinn helped her inside, Thomas bundled securely in her arms. "Far nicer than my cabin." The cottage had been stocked with firewood, basic provisions, and even a cradle that Quinn had discovered in one of the storerooms left behind by some previous occupant. A fire was already burning in the hearth, warming the small space. "Mrs. Rivera from the main house will check on you this evening," Quinn explained. "She's the housekeeper, and I'm just over there in the rooms beside the bunkhouse if you need anything." Sophia looked around the cottage, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I don't know what I did to deserve such kindness." "You don't have to deserve kindness, Sophia." Quinn shifted, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "It's just the decent thing." "Still," she insisted, "not everyone would have done what you've done, what you're still doing." Before Quinn could respond, Thomas began to fuss. Sophia immediately turned her attention to her son, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. Quinn watched as she soothed the baby, her movements gentle but confident despite her inexperience. "I should let you rest," he said, backing toward the door. "Remember, Mrs. Rivera will check on you later, and I'm not far if you need anything before then." Sophia looked up from Thomas, her smile warm. "Thank you, Quinn, for everything." As Quinn walked back to the bunkhouse, he tried to make sense of the emotions swirling through him. Relief, certainly, that Sophia and Thomas were safely settled. Satisfaction at having found a solution to their predicament. But there was something else too, something he wasn't ready to name. He had a job to focus on now. Responsibilities to Mr. Hanover and the ranch. Whatever this strange connection to Sophia might be, it would have to wait. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Quinn assumed his duties as foreman. The work was demanding but satisfying, managing the ranch hands, inspecting the herds, planning for the spring cattle drive. Each evening, he would check briefly on Sophia and Thomas, ensuring they had everything they needed without intruding on their privacy. On the 4th evening, he found Sophia sitting on the small porch of the cottage, wrapped in a blanket with Thomas sleeping peacefully in her arms. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting a warm glow over her face. "May I join you?" Quinn asked, removing his hat. Sophia smiled, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Please do. It's a beautiful evening." Quinn sat, stretching his legs out in front of him. "How are you feeling?" "Stronger every day," Sophia replied. "And Thomas is thriving. Dr. Holloway was right about the fresh air. It seems to agree with him." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the colors in the sky deepened and the first stars appeared. Quinn found himself sneaking glances at Sophia's profile, admiring the elegant line of her neck, the soft curve of her cheek. "Mrs. Rivera says Mrs. Hanover returns next week," Sophia said eventually. "She's bringing her daughter and son-in-law from San Francisco for an extended visit." "Mr. Hanover mentioned something about that," Quinn acknowledged. "He's been having the main house prepared for days." Mrs. Rivera also mentioned that Mrs. Hanover might have different ideas about me staying here. Sophia's voice held a note of anxiety. "What if she doesn't want us here, Quinn?" Quinn turned to face her fully. "Mr. Hanover gave his word, and from what I've seen, he's not a man who goes back on his promises. But if his wife objects, then we'll find another solution," Quinn interrupted firmly. You're not alone in this, Sophia, not anymore. Sophia's eyes, luminous in the fading light, searched his face. Why do you care so much about us? It was a question Quinn had been asking himself repeatedly. The truth was, he didn't fully understand it himself. I'm not sure, he admitted. Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone. Maybe because... He hesitated, then pushed forward. Because from the moment I found you in that snow, something changed. I can't explain it better than that. Sophia was silent for a long moment. Then softly, I feel it too, this connection. It makes no sense, and yet, Quinn agreed. Thomas stirred in Sophia's arms, making small noises of discontent. Sophia rocked him gently, her attention immediately focused on her son's needs. He's hungry, she explained. I should take him inside. Quinn stood, offering his hand to help her rise. Of course. Will you be all right tonight? Sophia accepted his hand, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through Quinn's arm. We'll be fine. Mrs. Rivera left a stew that I only need to heat, and Thomas has been sleeping better. Good. Quinn reluctantly released her hand. I'll check on you tomorrow. As he walked back to his quarters, Quinn found himself replaying their conversation. The acknowledgement of their unusual connection had shifted something between them, though he wasn't sure exactly what. All he knew was that Sophia Adams had somehow become important to him, in a way that both terrified and exhilarated him. The following week brought Mrs. Hanover's return, along with her daughter Caroline and son-in-law Edwin Prescott. Their arrival transformed the quiet ranch into a hive of activity, with trunks to be unpacked, social calls to be planned, and Mrs. Hanover's exacting standards to be met. Quinn was introduced to the family the day after their arrival. Mrs. Hanover was a handsome woman in her late 40s, elegantly dressed and sharp-eyed. She assessed Quinn with the practiced gaze of someone accustomed to judging people quickly. So you're the new foreman who rescued the widow and her baby, she remarked, her tone giving nothing away. Joseph has told me the story, quite dramatic. Just did what anyone would do, madam, Quinn replied, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Not just anyone would ride through a blizzard with a bleeding woman, Mr. Keller. A small smile softened her features. It speaks well of your character. Caroline Prescott, the Hanovers' only child, was a pretty young woman of about 25, with her mother's shrewd gaze and her father's direct manner. Mother is right, it was very heroic. And now Mrs. Adams is staying in the old foreman's cottage. Yes, madam. Just until she's fully recovered and can make other arrangements. Mrs. Hanover nodded thoughtfully. I should call on her tomorrow, see if there's anything she needs. Quinn was surprised by the offer. That's very kind of you, madam. Not at all. We women must look after each other, especially new mothers. Mrs. Hanover turned to her husband. Joseph, you've done the right thing, offering her shelter. We can certainly use another pair of hands in the house once she's well enough to work. Relief washed over Quinn. With Mrs. Hanover's approval, Sophia's position at the ranch was secure, at least for now. The next day, as promised, Mrs. Hanover visited Sophia at the cottage. Quinn, busy with ranch work, saw the elegant woman walking toward the small building, a basket over her arm. He resisted the urge to follow, to somehow protect Sophia from potential judgment or criticism. This was something she would have to navigate herself. It was evening before Quinn had a chance to check on Sophia. He approached the cottage with some trepidation, unsure of how the meeting with Mrs. Hanover had gone. When Sophia answered his knock, however, her face was alight with happiness. Come in, Quinn, she invited, stepping back. I have wonderful news. Inside, Thomas lay in his cradle, sleeping peacefully. The cottage was warm and smelled of fresh bread, a gift from Mrs. Hanover, Sophia explained as she poured coffee for them both. Mrs. Hanover was so kind, Sophia continued, sitting across from Quinn at the small table. Nothing like I expected. She brought baby clothes that had been Caroline's and food from the main house, and she paused, her eyes shining. She's offered me a permanent position, Quinn, as a lady's companion and assistant housekeeper. Quinn's eyebrows rose in surprise. That's unexpected, isn't it? She said she's been wanting someone to help with correspondence and household accounts, as well as assisting Mrs. Rivera. And the position comes with accommodation. We can stay in the cottage as long as we need to. Sophia clasped her hands together in excitement. It's more than I could have hoped for. What about Thomas? While you're working? That's the best part. There's a nursemaid in town, recently widowed herself, who Mrs. Hanover has been considering hiring to help when Caroline visits with her children. She'll care for Thomas while I'm working, and I'll have evenings and one full day a week with him. Sophia's eyes filled with tears of relief. Quinn, I can support my son. I can build a life for us here. The joy in her face was so pure, so genuine that Quinn couldn't help but share it. I'm happy for you, Sophia, truly. None of this would have happened without you, she said softly. You saved us that night, and you've been saving us ever since. Quinn shook his head. You're the one doing the saving now, for yourself and Thomas. Their eyes met across the table, and Quinn felt that now familiar pull, the connection that had been growing stronger with each passing day. Sophia seemed to feel it too, her gaze dropping to her coffee cup as a blush colored her cheeks. Mrs. Hanover also mentioned that there's to be a small gathering at the main house this weekend, she said, changing the subject. A dinner to welcome Caroline and Edwin. She's invited me to attend. That's quite an honor, Quinn remarked. The Hanovers don't socialize much, especially not with employees. I think she feels sorry for me, Sophia admitted. The tragic widow with the premature baby, but I'm grateful nonetheless. She hesitated, then added, will you be there too? As foreman, yes. Though I'll be at the far end of the table, no doubt. At least we'll both be out of place together, Sophia said with a small laugh. I have nothing suitable to wear to such an occasion. Mrs. Hanover seems the type to have thought of that, Quinn observed. I wouldn't be surprised if a dress appears mysteriously before Saturday. Sophia smiled. You're getting to know her well already. Part of my job is understanding the people I work for. Quinn finished his coffee and stood. I should go. Let you and Thomas rest. At the door, Sophia laid a hand on his arm. Thank you, Quinn, for checking on us every day, for caring. The touch of her hand, even through his shirt sleeve, sent warmth spiraling through him. It's my pleasure, Sophia, truly. As predicted, a dress did appear for Sophia, delivered by Mrs. Rivera with Mrs. Hanover's compliments. It was a deep blue silk, simple but elegant, and only slightly altered to fit Sophia's still recovering figure. Saturday evening found Quinn in his best shirt and vest, hair neatly combed, waiting in the main house dining room with the other guests. Joseph Hanover and Edwin Prescott were discussing business by the fireplace, while Caroline arranged flowers on the sideboard. The local banker and his wife, the only other guests, stood awkwardly nearby. Quinn felt equally out of place, though he masked it with the confidence he'd learned to project as foreman. He was watching the door, waiting for Sophia's arrival, when Mrs. Hanover entered with Sophia at her side. The blue dress was perfect, highlighting the ivory of Sophia's skin and the deep blue of her eyes. Her dark hair was arranged simply but elegantly, and though she was still thinner than before Thomas's birth, her figure was undeniably feminine. She looked beautiful and terrified. Quinn moved instinctively toward her, offering a reassuring smile. Mrs. Adams, you look lovely. Sophia's tense expression relaxed slightly at the sight of him. Mr. Keller, thank you. Mrs. Hanover watched the exchange with interest. "Mr. Keller, perhaps you would escort Mrs. Adams to her seat. I've placed her beside you as you're both new to our little community." "It would be my pleasure, madam," Quinn replied, offering his arm to Sophia. As they moved toward the table, Sophia leaned slightly toward him. "I'm so nervous," she whispered. "I've never dined with people like this." "Just follow my lead," Quinn murmured back, "though I'm hardly an expert myself." The dinner progressed more pleasantly than Quinn had anticipated. The conversation flowed easily, with Joseph Hanover skillfully drawing everyone into the discussion. Sophia, initially quiet, gradually gained confidence, even contributing a thoughtful comment about the development of Verdi that earned approving nods from the banker and his wife. Throughout the meal, Quinn was acutely aware of Sophia beside him, the delicate scent of her perfume, another gift from Mrs. Hanover. He suspected. The graceful movement of her hands, the soft sound of her laughter when Edwin told an amusing story about San Francisco society. After dinner, the men remained at the table with brandy while the women withdrew to the sitting room. Quinn, uncertain of his place, was relieved when Joseph Hanover gestured for him to stay. "Quite a remarkable woman, Mrs. Adams," the banker commented as they sipped their drinks. "To survive such an ordeal and still present herself so well. You said she was alone when you found her, Keller," Quinn nodded. "Her husband had died some months earlier in Denver. She was managing the cabin on her own." "Brave soul," the banker remarked. "Lucky you happened by when you did." "Providence, I'd call it," Edwin Prescott interjected. "The right man in the right place at exactly the right time." Joseph Hanover studied Quinn over the rim of his glass. "Indeed. And now Mrs. Adams seems to be settling in well here. My wife is quite taken with her." "She speaks very highly of Mrs. Hanover," Quinn replied carefully, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Good, good." Hanover nodded, seemingly satisfied. "It's important that our household runs smoothly, especially with my daughter and her husband visiting more frequently now. A steady, reliable presence like Mrs. Adams will be an asset." When the men eventually joined the women, Quinn found Sophia engaged in conversation with Caroline. She looked more relaxed now, her initial nervousness replaced by genuine interest in what the younger woman was saying. As the evening drew to a close, Quinn offered to escort Sophia back to her cottage. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black velvet sky. They walked in companionable silence for a few moments, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "You did well tonight," Quinn said eventually. "Everyone was impressed." Sophia laughed softly. "I was terrified, but Mrs. Hanover and Caroline were so kind, making sure I was included in the conversation." "The Hanovers are good people," Quinn agreed. "Fair employers, too." "I start my duties properly next week," Sophia told him. "Mrs. Holloway, the nursemaid from town, arrives on Tuesday to help with Thomas." They reached the cottage, a warm glow visible through the curtained windows where Mrs. Rivera waited with Thomas. Sophia turned to face Quinn on the small porch, her expression serious in the moonlight. "Everything is changing so quickly," she said softly. "A week ago I thought Thomas and I would have to struggle alone. Now we have a home, security, even friends." Her eyes met his. "Because of you, Quinn." "You give me too much credit," he demurred. "You're the one who's impressed the Hanovers, that's all you're doing. But without you, I wouldn't be here at all." Sophia stepped closer, her hand coming to rest lightly on his chest. "Thomas and I would have died in that storm. Or if we'd somehow survived that, we'd be facing destitution now. You changed everything." Quinn was acutely aware of her proximity, of the warmth of her hand through his shirt, of the soft scent of her perfume. "Sophia," the cottage door opened suddenly, spilling golden light onto the porch. Mrs. Rivera stood there, Thomas fussing in her arms. "Forgive the interruption, but the little one is hungry, Mrs. Adams." The moment broken, Sophia stepped back. "Of course. Thank you for watching him, Mrs. Rivera." The housekeeper nodded, passing Thomas to his mother. "He's been good as gold until just now. Mr. Keller," she acknowledged with a slight nod before departing. Left alone with Sophia and Thomas, Quinn felt suddenly awkward. "I should go. Let you tend to him." Sophia adjusted Thomas in her arms, soothing his fussing with practiced ease. "Thank you for escorting me home, Quinn, and for your company this evening." "It was my pleasure." Quinn hesitated, then added, "Perhaps, when you have your day off next week, you and Thomas might like to go for a drive around the ranch, if the weather permits. There are some beautiful views that you haven't seen yet." Sophia's smile was like sunrise. "We'd like that very much." The following week established a new rhythm at the Hanover Ranch. Sophia began her duties, splitting her time between assisting Mrs. Hanover with correspondence and helping Mrs. Rivera manage the household. Thomas thrived under Mrs. Holloway's care, growing stronger and more alert every day. Quinn threw himself into his work, determined to prove to Joseph Hanover that his trust was not misplaced. But despite his busy schedule, he found himself looking for excuses to cross paths with Sophia, riding by the main house when he knew she might be there, taking his meals at times when she might be in the kitchen, volunteering for tasks that might bring him near her. On Sophia's first full day off, Quinn arrived at the cottage with a small wagon hitched to a gentle mare. Thomas, now almost a month old, was wrapped warmly against the February chill, secure in his mother's arms. "Are you sure he's not too young for an outing?" Quinn asked, helping Sophia up onto the wagon seat. "Dr. Holloway says fresh air is good for him as long as he's kept warm," Sophia replied, settling Thomas against her. "And I've been longing to see more of the ranch. We've been here nearly 2 weeks, and I've barely ventured beyond the cottage and the main house." Quinn clicked to the mare, and they set off at a comfortable pace. He guided them along well-maintained trails, showing Sophia the extent of the Hanover Holdings' lush pastures now covered in snow where cattle would graze in spring, the clear stream that never froze even in the coldest winters, the distant mountains that marked the property's boundary. They stopped on a small rise that offered a panoramic view of the entire ranch. Despite the winter barrenness, it was beautiful, pristine snow catching the sunlight, pine trees standing sentinel along the ridges, the buildings of the ranch complex neat and well-maintained in the valley below. "It's breathtaking," Sophia said, gazing out at the vista. Thomas had fallen asleep, nestled warm and secure against her. "No wonder Mr. Hanover is so proud of what he's built here." "He started with almost nothing," Quinn told her, wrapping a blanket more securely around her and Thomas. "Just 50 head of cattle and this land, which nobody thought was worth much then. 20 years of hard work turned it into what you see now." Sophia looked at him curiously. "You admire him." "I do," Quinn admitted. "He's a fair man who built something lasting through honest work. That's rare enough to respect." "And what about you, Quinn?" Sophia asked softly. "What do you want to build?" It was a question Quinn had asked himself many times over the years. "Something of my own eventually. A smaller spread, perhaps. Nothing like Hanover's empire, but enough to leave something behind." He glanced at her, then quickly away. "Something to pass on to, well, to family if I ever have one." Sophia was quiet for a moment, her gaze returning to the view. "That's a good dream." They sat in comfortable silence, the only sounds the occasional stamp of the mare's hoof and Thomas's soft breathing. Quinn found himself stealing glances at Sophia's profile, admiring the delicate curve of her cheek, the graceful line of her neck. "We should head back," he said eventually, reluctant to end their time together but conscious of the winter chill. "Don't want Thomas getting cold." As they drove back toward the cottage, Sophia turned to him. "Thank you for today, Quinn. It's been wonderful to get out to see something beyond the same four walls." "My pleasure," Quinn replied sincerely. "Perhaps we could make it a regular outing, every week on your day off, weather permitting." Sophia's smile was warm. "I'd like that very much," and so a pattern was established. Each week, on Sophia's day off, Quinn would arrange for a few hours away from his duties to take her and Thomas somewhere on the ranch. As February gave way to March, and March to April, these outings became the highlight of Quinn's week, a precious time when they could talk freely, sharing thoughts and memories and dreams. He learned about Sophia's childhood in Pennsylvania, her journey west with Thomas Sr. After their hasty marriage, the gradual disintegration of their relationship as her husband's dreams of striking it rich gave way to gambling and drinking. She, in turn, learned about Quinn's early years in Texas, losing his mother to consumption, working ranch jobs from the age of 12 to survive. As the weeks passed, Thomas grew stronger, his premature birth becoming less evident as he gained weight and alertness. By April, he was a chubby, happy baby with his mother's dark hair and clear blue eyes. He recognized Quinn now, gurgling with delight when the foreman appeared at the cottage door. Spring brought new life to the Hanover ranch. Calves were born, fields turned green, and the pace of work increased dramatically. Quinn found himself working from dawn till dusk most days, preparing for the upcoming cattle drive to the railhead in Reno. Despite his busy schedule, he maintained his weekly outings with Sophia and Thomas. As the weather warmed, they began taking picnic lunches to various spots around the ranch beside the stream where wildflowers bloomed in profusion, under a lone oak tree on a gentle hillside, near a small pond where ducks nested in the reeds. It was during one such picnic in late April, with Thomas napping on a blanket beside them, that Quinn finally acknowledged to himself what he'd been feeling for months. He was in love with Sophia Adams. Completely, irrevocably in love. The realization came as they sat side by side, watching clouds drift across the blue April sky. Sophia was telling him about a letter Mrs. Hanover had received from an old friend in San Francisco, describing the latest fashions in such detail that they'd both laughed at the absurdity. Quinn turned to look at her, struck by the animation in her face, the way the sunlight caught in her dark hair, the gentle curve of her lips as she smiled. And suddenly, he knew. This woman, this strong, kind, beautiful woman had become the center of his world. The knowledge terrified him. Sophia was still recovering from the loss of her husband, still building a new life for herself and Thomas. She saw Quinn as a friend, a protector perhaps, but not as a suitor. And even if she did, what did he have to offer her? A foreman's position was respectable but hardly secure enough to support a family. "Quinn." Sophia's voice broke into his thoughts. "You've gone very quiet. Is something wrong?" He forced a smile. "Just thinking about the cattle drive next week. There's still much to prepare." Sophia studied him, clearly not entirely convinced. "You work too hard. You need to rest sometimes too," says the woman who manages Mrs. Hanover's correspondence, assists Mrs. Rivera, and cares for an infant, Quinn teased, deflecting her concern. "That's different," Sophia insisted. "I have help with Thomas, and my work isn't physical like yours." "I'm fine, truly," Quinn assured her. "Just a bit distracted with everything that needs doing." Thomas chose that moment to wake, fussing slightly as he adjusted to consciousness. Sophia immediately turned her attention to her son, lifting him into her arms and soothing him with gentle words. Quinn watched them together, his heart full of emotions he dared not express. Later that evening, after returning Sophia and Thomas to their cottage, Quinn walked back to his quarters deep in thought. His feelings for Sophia complicated everything. If he spoke of them, he risked ruining the friendship they'd built. If he remained silent, he would have to watch as she eventually moved on, perhaps even married someone else. The thought of Sophia with another man sent a sharp pain through Quinn's chest. Yet what right did he have to feel that way? She was free to build whatever life she chose. His job was to support her choices, not impose his own desires. The cattle drive to Reno provided a welcome distraction. For 10 days, Quinn focused entirely on moving 3,000 head of cattle safely to the railhead. The work was exhausting and all-consuming, leaving no time for personal reflections. When he returned to the ranch, dusty and weary but satisfied with a job well done, his first thought was of Sophia and Thomas. Had they missed him? Had anything changed in his absence? He forced himself to report to Joseph Hanover first, providing a full accounting of the drive and the prices secured for the cattle. Hanover seemed pleased, offering Quinn a bonus for the successful completion of the drive. "You've proven yourself these past months, Keller," the rancher said, pouring them each a measure of whiskey. "I made the right choice in hiring you." "Thank you, sir," Quinn replied, accepting the drink. "The men worked hard. They deserve most of the credit." "A good leader acknowledges his team's efforts," Hanover observed with approval. "Speaking of which, Mrs. Adams has been doing excellent work as well. My wife is quite pleased with her assistance." Quinn felt a surge of pride at the praise for Sophia. "She's a remarkable woman." Hanover gave him a shrewd look. "Indeed she is. And not unnoticed by others, I might add. Williamson from the bank has called twice while you were away, ostensibly on business but lingering to speak with Mrs. Adams both times." A cold feeling settled in Quinn's stomach. Timothy Williamson was the banker's son, recently returned from schooling in the East. He was about Quinn's age, well-educated and well-positioned to inherit his father's business. "Mrs. Adams is free to receive callers, of course," Quinn said carefully, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Of course," Hanover agreed, watching Quinn closely. "Though I had rather thought, well, never mind. Not my business." After reporting to Hanover, Quinn cleaned up and changed into fresh clothes before walking to Sophia's cottage. It was early evening, the spring air fragrant with blossoming fruit trees. Lights glowed warmly in the cottage windows, and as Quinn approached, he could hear Sophia singing softly to Thomas. He hesitated on the porch, suddenly uncertain of his welcome. What if Hanover was right and Williamson's interest had been reciprocated? What if, in his absence, Sophia had begun to consider a future that didn't include Quinn's friendship? Before he could knock, the door opened, revealing Sophia with Thomas in her arms. Her face lit up at the sight of him, dispelling his doubts instantly. "Quinn, you're back." The genuine pleasure in her voice warmed him more than any fire could have. "We've missed you terribly, haven't we, Thomas?" As if in agreement, Thomas gurgled and reached toward Quinn with chubby hands. Without thinking, Quinn took the baby from Sophia, bouncing him gently in his arms. "Hello, little man," he said softly. "Have you been good for your mama while I was gone?" "He's been wonderful," Sophia assured him, stepping back to let Quinn enter the cottage. "And look, he's trying to roll over now. Show Quinn, Thomas." She laid a blanket on the floor, and Quinn carefully placed Thomas on his back. Sure enough, the baby immediately began struggling to turn over, his little face scrunched with concentration until he managed to flop onto his stomach. "Well done," Quinn praised, genuinely impressed. "You'll be crawling before we know it." Sophia beamed with pride. Mrs. Hanover says he's advancing remarkably well for a baby who was born early. Dr. Holloway checked him last week and pronounced him completely healthy. Quinn sat in one of the cottage's simple chairs, suddenly aware of how tired he was after the long drive. Sophia, noticing his fatigue, immediately began preparing coffee. "You must be exhausted," she said, moving efficiently around the small kitchen. "The drive went well." "Very well," Quinn confirmed, stifling a yawn. "Good prices at the railhead, too. Mr. Hanover is pleased, as he should be." Sophia placed a cup of coffee before him, along with a plate of fresh biscuits. "Mrs. Hanover mentioned that he relies on you more than any previous foreman." Quinn sipped the coffee gratefully. "That's good to hear. I've been trying to justify his faith in me." Sophia sat across from him, Thomas now contentedly playing with a wooden rattle on the blanket. "You don't need to try, Quinn. You're naturally good at what you do. Everyone sees it." Her praise warmed him, as did her obvious pleasure at his return. They talked for nearly an hour, catching up on everything that had happened during his absence. Quinn found himself relaxing completely for the first time in days, the tension of the cattle drive melting away in the comfort of Sophia's company. Only when Thomas began to fuss for his evening feeding did Quinn reluctantly stand to leave. "I should go. Let you both get some rest." At the door, Sophia laid a hand on his arm. "I'm glad you're back safely, Quinn. It wasn't the same without you here." Her touch, her words, her smile, they all combined to weaken Quinn's resolve to keep his feelings hidden. Before he could think better of it, he reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I missed you," he admitted quietly. "Both of you." Something shifted in Sophia's eyes, a softening, a recognition. For a breathless moment, Quinn thought she might lean toward him, that he might have the courage to kiss her. Then Thomas's cries grew more insistent, breaking the spell. Sophia stepped back, her cheeks flushed. "Good night, Quinn." "Good night, Sophia." He placed his hat on his head and stepped out into the gathering dusk, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The following Sunday, their regular day for outings, Quinn arrived at Sophia's cottage to find her dressed more formally than usual. Thomas, similarly attired in a tiny suit that Quinn suspected was another gift from Mrs. Hanover. "Are we going somewhere special?" he asked, puzzled by their formal appearance. "Church," Sophia explained. "I haven't attended since before Thomas was born, and Mrs. Hanover invited us to join the family today. I hope you don't mind changing our plans." Quinn was disappointed at losing their private time together, but understood the importance of the invitation. Attending church with the Hanovers was a public acknowledgement of Sophia's position in the household, a sign of respect that would cement her standing in the community. "Of course not," he assured her. "I'll drive you into town." The small church in Verdi was filled to capacity when they arrived, the spring Sunday bringing out the entire community. Quinn had attended occasionally in the past months, but usually sat alone near the back. Today, however, Mrs. Hanover beckoned them to join the family pew. Sitting beside Sophia, with Thomas contentedly nestled in her arms, Quinn was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. The foreman and the widow, seated with the Hanovers like family, it was bound to start tongues wagging. After the service, while the congregation lingered outside to socialize, Quinn noticed Timothy Williamson making his way toward them. The banker's son was handsome in a polished way, his suit expensive and his manner confident. "Mrs. Adams," Williamson greeted Sophia with a slight bow. "You look lovely today, and young Thomas is growing impressively." He nodded to Quinn. "Keller, good to see you back from the drive." "Williamson," Quinn acknowledged, fighting an irrational dislike of the man. "Business at the bank keeping you busy?" "Always," Williamson replied smoothly. though I make time for pleasant company when available." He turned back to Sophia. "Speaking of which, Mrs. Adams, I was wondering if you might consider joining me for dinner at the hotel next Saturday. They've hired a new chef from Sacramento who's quite talented, I'm told." Quinn tensed, waiting for Sophia's response. She smiled politely but shook her head. "That's very kind, Mr. Williamson, but I couldn't possibly leave Thomas in the evening. He still needs feeding regularly." "Another time, perhaps," Williamson suggested, undeterred. "When the little fellow is a bit older." "Perhaps," Sophia agreed noncommittally, "though my duties at the Hanover household keep me quite busy." Mrs. Hanover approached then, ending the conversation as she drew Sophia away to meet the Reverend's wife. Quinn found himself alone with Williamson, an awkward silence stretching between them. "Mrs. Adams is a remarkable woman," Williamson commented eventually, "to have overcome such adversity and established herself so quickly in Verdi." "She is remarkable," Quinn agreed, watching as Sophia charmed the Reverend's wife with her genuine warmth. "And devoted to her son." Williamson studied Quinn thoughtfully. "You seem quite protective of her, Keller." Quinn met the banker's gaze directly. "She deserves protection." "She's been through a lot." "Indeed." Williamson's tone was neutral, but his eyes were shrewd. "Well, good day to you, Keller. Give my regards to Mr. Hanover." As Williamson walked away, Quinn released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The exchange had been civil enough, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. Williamson saw him as a rival for Sophia's attention, which meant the banker's son intended to pursue her seriously. The thought troubled Quinn throughout the remainder of the day. Timothy Williamson could offer Sophia security, social standing, and a comfortable future for Thomas. What could Quinn offer that could compete with that? The question haunted him as spring advanced into summer. The ranch grew busier with each passing week, but Quinn still made time for his Sunday outings with Sophia and Thomas. The baby, now 6 months old, was thriving sitting up on his own, babbling constantly, reaching for everything within grasp. Sophia, too, had blossomed. Her position in the Hanover household was secure, her skills valued by both Mr. and Mrs. Hanover. She had made friends in Verdi, become a regular at church, and even begun setting aside a small savings from her wages. The frightened, desperate woman Quinn had found bleeding in the snow was gone, replaced by a confident, capable mother building a good life for herself and her son. Timothy Williamson continued his pursuit, calling at the Hanover ranch whenever business provided an excuse, bringing small gifts for Thomas, inviting Sophia to various town events. She remained politely friendly, but, to Quinn's relief, showed no particular interest in the banker's attentions. As July arrived, bringing hot days and warm nights, the Hanovers planned their annual Independence Day celebration, a tradition that brought together everyone from the surrounding ranches and farms for food, games, music, and fireworks. It was the social event of the summer, and preparations consumed the entire household for weeks beforehand. The day of the celebration dawned clear and hot. Quinn was busy from early morning, directing the setup of tables and chairs, organizing the roasting pits for the beef, and ensuring the ranch hands knew their duties for the day. He caught only glimpses of Sophia, equally busy helping Mrs. Hanover coordinate the food preparation and decoration. By mid-afternoon, guests began to arrive, neighboring ranchers with their families, merchants from Verdi, friends from as far away as Reno. The ranch yard was transformed into a festive gathering place, with red, white, and blue bunting draped from every available surface, long tables laden with food, and a small platform where a group of musicians from Verdi tuned their instruments. Quinn, having completed his immediate duties, was searching the crowd for Sophia when Joseph Hanover approached, 2 glasses of lemonade in hand. "Looking for someone?" the rancher asked, offering Quinn one of the glasses. "Just checking that everything's running smoothly," Quinn replied, accepting the lemonade gratefully. "It's a good turnout this year." "Best we've had," Hanover agreed, surveying the crowd with satisfaction. "You've done well organizing everything, Keller. I appreciate it." "Just doing my job, sir." Hanover studied him for a moment, then said casually, "Mrs. Adams looks particularly lovely today, doesn't she? My wife gave her that dress as a gift. Said every young woman should have something special for occasions like this." Quinn followed Hanover's gaze and felt his breath catch. Sophia stood across the yard, talking with Mrs. Hanover and several other women. She wore a pale green dress that complemented her dark hair and fair skin perfectly. Thomas, dressed in a miniature suit, sat contentedly on her hip, one small hand tangled in her hair. "She does look lovely," Quinn agreed, unable to keep the admiration from his voice. "Williamson thinks so too," Hanover observed. "He's been hovering around her since he arrived." Sure enough, Timothy Williamson stood nearby, clearly waiting for a chance to approach Sophia. The banker's son was impeccably dressed as always, his confidence evident in his stance. "She could do worse than Williamson," Hanover continued, watching Quinn closely. "His father owns the bank, and Timothy will inherit eventually. He could provide well for her and the boy." Quinn knew the rancher was right, but the thought of Sophia with Williamson sent a surge of jealousy through him so strong it was almost physical pain. "She deserves someone who truly cares for her," he said before he could stop himself. "Not just someone with money and position." Hanover raised an eyebrow. "And you don't think Williamson truly cares for her?" "I think Williamson sees a beautiful, respectable widow who would make a suitable wife for a banker's son," Quinn replied, his tone sharper than he'd intended. "I'm not sure he sees Sophia herself, who she is, what she's overcome, what she needs." "And you do?" The question was gentle but direct. Quinn hesitated, then answered honestly. "I'd like to think so, yes." Hanover nodded slowly. "I thought as much. The question is, Keller, what do you intend to do about it?" Before Quinn could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of another rancher with questions about the cattle market. By the time their conversation concluded, the musicians had begun playing, and many guests were dancing in the cleared area before the platform. Quinn spotted Sophia now standing alone, Thomas having been whisked away by Mrs. Holloway for a nap in the main house. Without allowing himself to overthink, Quinn made his way through the crowd toward her. "Would you care to dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Sophia looked surprised but pleased. "I'd love to, though I warn you it's been years since I've danced." "Fortunately, I'm not much of a dancer myself," Quinn admitted as he led her toward the dancing area. "So we can stumble through together." The musicians were playing a waltz, slow enough that Quinn could manage the basic steps without embarrassing himself completely. Sophia's hand was warm in his, her waist slender beneath his other palm. As they moved together, finding their rhythm, Quinn was acutely aware of her closeness, of the subtle scent of lavender that clung to her hair, of the way her eyes met his with shy pleasure. "This is nice," Sophia said softly. "I'd forgotten how enjoyable dancing can be with the right partner." "I'm hardly the right partner," Quinn demurred. "I'm sure my boots have nearly crushed your toes multiple times." Sophia laughed, the sound like music. "Not once. You're doing perfectly well." As the waltz ended, another began immediately. Without discussing it, they continued dancing, moving more confidently now. Quinn found himself relaxing, enjoying the simple pleasure of holding Sophia in his arms, even in this most proper of contexts. Williamson has been watching for a chance to dance with you, Quinn observed, nodding toward the banker's son, who indeed was watching them with poorly concealed frustration. Has he? Sophia replied, sounding uninterested. I hadn't noticed. He's been very persistent in his attentions to you these past months. Sophia's expression grew thoughtful. Yes, he has. Very kind, very proper. And, Quinn prompted, his heart beating faster. And I have no interest in his attentions, kind as they may be, Sophia replied firmly. Mr. Williamson is a good man, I'm sure, but... She hesitated, then continued quietly, my heart is not available to him. The implication of her words sent hope surging through Quinn. Sophia. But the waltz ended then, and they were surrounded by other couples, the moment for private conversation lost. As they made their way off the dance floor, Mrs. Hanover appeared with Thomas, now awake from his nap and eager to rejoin his mother. He's been asking for you, Mrs. Hanover said, transferring the squirming baby to Sophia's arms. Though Mama is still the only word he can manage properly. Thomas immediately reached for Quinn as well, his small face lighting up with recognition. And who's this, Thomas? Sophia asked, turning so the baby could see Quinn better. Is this Quinn? Thomas exclaimed, the approximation of Quinn's name clear enough to make all three adults laugh. Well, I'm flattered to be his second word, Quinn said, offering his finger for Thomas to grasp. Hello, little man. Did you have a good nap? Mrs. Hanover watched the exchange with a knowing smile. I'll leave you three to enjoy the celebration, she said, moving away to attend to other guests. The remainder of the day passed in a pleasant blur of food, music, games, and conversation. Quinn found himself constantly aware of Sophia's presence, even when they were separated by the demands of the celebration. Whenever he looked for her, her eyes seemed to find his across the crowd, a silent communication that made his heart race. As twilight descended, the younger children were put to bed in the main house, while everyone else gathered in a meadow below the ranch buildings for the promised fireworks. Blankets were spread on the grass, families and friends settling together to watch the display. Quinn hesitated, unsure of his place. He was neither family nor exactly a friend to the Hanovers, he was their employee. Yet when Sophia spread her blanket at the edge of the group, Thomas drowsily content in her arms, she looked up at Quinn expectantly. Will you join us? She asked simply. Quinn sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Thomas, fighting sleep but losing the battle, cuddled against his mother's chest, one small hand reaching out to grasp Quinn's shirt sleeve. The first fireworks exploded overhead, drawing gasps and applause from the crowd. Red, blue, gold, and silver lights burst against the darkening sky, reflecting in Sophia's upturned face. Quinn found himself watching her more than the display, entranced by the wonder in her expression, the way the colorful lights played across her features. It's beautiful, Sophia breathed, her eyes wide with delight. I haven't seen fireworks since I was a girl in Pennsylvania. Beautiful, Quinn agreed, though he wasn't looking at the sky. Thomas finally surrendered to sleep, his small body going limp in Sophia's arms. She adjusted him carefully, making sure he was comfortable despite the noise of the fireworks. He sleeps so soundly now, she remarked softly. Nothing like those first weeks when he woke at every sound. He feels secure, Quinn observed. He knows he's safe with you. Sophia's eyes met his, something unspoken passing between them. We both feel secure now. After so long feeling afraid and alone, it's a precious thing. The final fireworks cascaded across the sky, a spectacular finish that drew appreciative cheers from the crowd. As the echoes faded, people began gathering their belongings, preparing to depart for home or retire to the guest rooms prepared in the main house and bunkhouse. Quinn helped Sophia to her feet, careful not to wake Thomas. Together they walked back toward her cottage, the path lit by lanterns hung for the occasion. The night air was still warm, fragrant with summer blossoms and the lingering scent of gunpowder from the fireworks. At the cottage door, Sophia turned to face Quinn. "Would you like to come in? Just for a few minutes. I could make coffee." The invitation was innocent enough, but Quinn sensed a significance beneath it. "I'd like that," he said simply. Inside, Sophia gently laid Thomas in his crib, now moved to a small side room that served as his nursery. The baby stirred but didn't wake, one small fist tucked under his chin in sleep. While Sophia prepared coffee, Quinn sat at the small table, his thoughts racing. Hanover's question echoed in his mind. "What do you intend to do about it?" The celebration, the dancing, the quiet moments under the fireworks, they had all strengthened his conviction that his feelings for Sophia were reciprocated. But was he ready to act on that knowledge? Was she? Sophia placed 2 cups of coffee on the table and sat across from Quinn. In the soft lamplight, her eyes were luminous, her expression both hopeful and nervous. "I've been thinking," she began, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "About the future, Thomas's and mine." Quinn nodded encouragingly. "What about it?" "The Hanovers have been incredibly generous, offering us a home here, giving me meaningful work. I'm grateful beyond words." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But this was always meant to be temporary, a safe harbor until we could stand on our own." A cold feeling settled in Quinn's stomach. Was she planning to leave, to take Thomas and start fresh somewhere else? "And you're ready to move on now?" "Not exactly." Sophia met his gaze directly. "I'm ready to think beyond mere survival, to consider what kind of life I want for Thomas and for myself." Relief mingled with renewed uncertainty. "What kind of life do you want, Sophia?" Her eyes never left his. "One with love at its center, real love, not the pale imitation I had with Thomas Sr." She took a deep breath, then continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The kind of love I've begun to feel for you." Quinn's heart seemed to stop, then race forward at double speed. "Sophia, you don't have to say anything," she hurried on. "I know it's forward of me to speak first, but life is too short and too precious to waste in silence and uncertainty. These past months you've become everything to me, to us, and I needed you to know." Quinn reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I've been trying to find the courage to tell you the same thing," he admitted. "I love you, Sophia. I think I've loved you since that night in the snow, though I didn't recognize it then." Tears filled Sophia's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "I was so afraid you only saw me as someone to protect, someone you felt responsible for." "At first, perhaps," Quinn acknowledged, "but not for long." "How could I not fall in love with you? Your strength, your kindness, your devotion to Thomas, everything about you is remarkable." He rose from his chair, moving around the table to kneel beside her. Taking both her hands in his, he continued, "I don't have much to offer you, Sophia. The foreman's position is good, but it's not wealth. I've saved some money, enough for a small place of our own eventually," but Sophia pressed her fingers against his lips, silencing him. "I don't want wealth, Quinn. I don't need it. I need you, your goodness, your steadiness, your love." Quinn's heart was so full he thought it might burst. "I want to build a life with you and Thomas, to be a father to him, a husband to you, if you'll have me." In answer, Sophia leaned forward and kissed him. It was a gentle kiss, tentative at first, then deepening as Quinn responded. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as years of loneliness melted away in the warmth of her embrace. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sophia rested her forehead against his. "Is that a yes?" Quinn asked, smiling against her lips. "That is a definite yes," Sophia confirmed, her eyes shining with happiness. They were married 2 months later in the small church in Verdi. Joseph Hanover stood as Quinn's best man, while Mrs. Hanover proudly held Thomas during the ceremony. The entire community turned out for the wedding, even Timothy Williamson, who graciously offered his congratulations to the couple. The Hanovers insisted that Quinn and Sophia continue to use the cottage, now expanded with an additional bedroom for Thomas and improved furnishings throughout. Quinn's position as foreman provided them with a comfortable living, and Sophia continued her work for Mrs. Hanover, though on a reduced schedule that allowed more time with Thomas. By the following spring, Sophia was expecting their first child together. Thomas, now walking and talking with the boundless energy of a toddler, was delighted by the prospect of a sibling. Quinn, watching his son for Thomas was his son in every way that mattered. Play in the garden outside their cottage, felt a contentment he had never imagined possible. Sophia joined him on the porch, her hand resting on her growing belly. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" she asked, leaning against his shoulder. "About how close we came to never meeting," Quinn replied, wrapping his arm around her. "If I'd taken a different trail that day, if the storm had come an hour later." "But you didn't, and it didn't," Sophia reminded him, turning in his embrace to face him. "You were exactly where you needed to be. We both were." Quinn placed his hand over hers on her belly, feeling the strong kick of their unborn child. "I think about that night sometimes, how terrified I was that you and Thomas wouldn't survive. But we did survive," Sophia said softly, "because of you, and now look at us." Thomas came running toward them, a flower clutched in his small hand. "Mama, Papa, look!" Quinn scooped him up, settling the boy on his hip. "That's a beautiful flower, Thomas. Is it for your mama?" Thomas nodded vigorously, presenting the slightly crushed daisy to Sophia with solemn ceremony. "For baby too," he added, patting Sophia's belly gently as he'd been taught. "The baby will love it," Sophia assured him, accepting the gift with appropriate gravity. "Shall we put it in water so it stays pretty?" As Sophia took Thomas inside to find a suitable container for his treasure, Quinn remained on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. From disaster had come his greatest blessing, a family of his own, built on love and trust and shared dreams. Their daughter was born in the early autumn, a healthy, strong-lunged girl they named Sarah Elizabeth Keller. Thomas was fascinated by his tiny sister, constantly wanting to help with her care, proudly telling anyone who would listen that he was a big brother now. Years passed, and the Keller family grew. 2 more sons joined them, James and Michael, completing their family. Quinn eventually realized his dream of owning his own ranch, a modest spread adjoining the Hanover property, purchased with his savings and a generous loan from Joseph Hanover, who declared it an investment in family. Thomas grew into a fine young man who shared Quinn's love of ranching and Sophia's kindness. Though he knew the story of his birth father, he never thought of Quinn as anything but his true father, the man who had ridden through a blizzard to save him and his mother, the man who had loved them both unfailingly every day since. On the 20th anniversary of their first meeting, Quinn took Sophia to the spot where he had found her fallen in the snow. The old cabin was gone now, replaced by a small memorial stone that Quinn had placed there privately. "For remembrance," the simple inscription read, "where love began." February 12, 1876. Sophia stood beside him, her hand warm in his despite the winter chill. Her dark hair was now threaded with silver, her face lined with the evidence of a life filled with laughter and love. To Quinn, she was more beautiful than ever. "I never thought that day that I could be this happy," Sophia said softly, leaning against his shoulder. "I was so certain that Thomas and I would die here. And I never imagined when I rode through that blizzard that I was carrying my whole future in my arms," Quinn replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Behind them, their 4 children waited in the wagon, talking and laughing together. Thomas, now a grown man of 20, sat with his arm around his wife, their first child expected in the spring. The family Quinn and Sophia had built together was expanding into a new generation. "We should get back," Sophia said eventually. "Sarah's making dinner for everyone, and you know how seriously she takes her cooking." Quinn smiled, thinking of their headstrong daughter who had inherited her mother's determination and her father's directness. "Heaven forbid we're late for Sarah's pot roast." As they turned to leave, Sophia paused for one last look at the memorial stone at the place where their story had begun. "Thank you," she whispered, whether to Quinn or to some higher power, even she wasn't sure. Quinn squeezed her hand. "For what?" Sophia's smile was radiant, holding all the love and joy of their 20 years together. "For finding me in the snow, for saving us, for everything that came after." "I'd do it all again," Quinn told her, his voice rough with emotion. "Every bit of it for you, for our family." Hand in hand, they walked back to the wagon where their children waited, their footprints marking the snow just as their love had marked each other's lives deeply, permanently, beautifully. The journey that had begun in desperation on a snowy night had led them here, to a life richer and more fulfilling than either could have imagined. From the darkest moment of Sophia's life had come her greatest joy. From Quinn's simple act of decency had grown a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone, carried forward in the hearts of their children and their children's children. As Quinn helped Sophia into the wagon, their eyes met in perfect understanding. No words were needed between them anymore, just the quiet certainty that, in finding each other, they had found everything.